viral is a loaded word, right? It's different people take very different contexts out of it. But I think for me, it's any campaign that becomes famous, that goes beyond just achieving its objectives of its target KPI, and gets to be part of the zeitgeist, gets to be part of the culture, gets to be passed around, to be celebrated. And that usually is driven by the amount of emotional voltage that is present in that piece of work. I think firstly it has to be relevant. It has to be relevant to the brief, to the brand, to what we are setting out to achieve. What you present to people, as I mentioned before, has to have that sort of emotional voltage, emotional connection to it. We tend to think that you have to have some sort of a spark to it. You can either make people laugh, you can make them cry, you can make them angry about something, you can make them feel motivated about something, but it has to have that sense of driving a community to an actionable place where they not only engage with the content but organically help grow it. I think that's a very vital component of whatever we come up with in order to drive that piece of content for the brand. Well, it was planned in the sense of the way we launched the idea. It was highly topical. It was about the upcoming elections, which was on everybody's mind in the country, and we knew that it would resonate. People do go to the newspaper to find information about the elections. We knew that that's the one place they would go to find more details about what we were talking about. So there was, I think again, relevance played a really big part. The fact that it was very highly topical played a really big part, and the boldness behind it. I think that's another aspect you'll see in a lot of work that becomes famous, that people question, wow, that's really bold. How did they manage to do this? I think there was a big element of that as well. A newspaper deciding not to print their edition, which has never happened in the 88-year-old history, was pretty phenomenal for a country. Just the surprise element of it, the shock element of it, that you go to the newsstand and you expect to see that, we announced a day before that we'll come out with a special elections edition. So here you are going to the newsstand to expect a full debrief on what's going on, and then you don't see the paper. And then you see a little note saying that, look, we took all the paper and ink from today's edition and we submitted it or donated it to the government to print election voting ballots on. And all of a sudden it all clicks together that, okay, here's an action that this brand created, and that's what drove the message. I like the word impact because we are Impact BBDO for a reason. Look, I think if I were to look at some of the very successful pieces of famous work from around the world, whether it is for purpose-driven agendas such as the Ice Bucket Challenge, which was a very simple viral piece. Somebody talked about the fact that it doesn't have to be high budget or high complexity. It was a very simple, cheap idea that everybody could be part of. Again, that sense of community, that sense of fun that was brought forward for a very serious cause too. Or it could be something very commercially driven, like the drumming gorilla, which just entertained people and people passed it around and talked about it. If I were to get really scientific about it, it's what drives our happy hormones, right? There has to be some sort of a reward in your brain for not only consuming the content, but wanting to be part of that community that passes it around or gets to talk about it. That certain hit of dopamine that you get where you've just laughed, you've been emotionally engaged with it, where you've cried because it's moved you so much, where you feel like you're motivated to create an action. All those are elements of that same emotional voltage that'll be the result of the impact of that work. Look, every case is different, right? But I think all successful campaigns, and by successful I mean campaigns that not only are memorable but also highly effective because of that memorability, have that core element at heart where you have to strategize properly, first of all. I mean, if there is a process to it, you have to understand what the ask is. You have to then dig out an insight that'll work, that'll resonate with the audience, that'll connect with them, that'll have that impact. And then, I know you said technique, so I'm using it as what comes in after you come up with the idea. So whether it's the craft of producing the work, or it's the strategy in delivering it to the right audience. How do you target? How do you make sure that people see your work? How do you make sure that it becomes famous? How do you make sure that it is memorable? All of these are, I feel, equal parts of the campaign. Everything has to go right to make it successful.